All right, this lesson is called Believing with Head and Heart. And really, those two things are two sides of the same coin. The Apostle Paul addresses both sides of the knowledge-love coin when he says to the Corinthians, knowledge puffs up while love builds up. Now, I usually hear this verse quoted by people who prefer a brand of faith that doesn't really concern itself too much with theological precision. They say, just give me Jesus, not all that confusing theological stuff. They're the ones who roll their eyes when someone presses them on what they mean when they make statements about God and God's ways in the world. But that's not the only verse these people love to use. Another one that they use as a catch-all for everything that they really just don't want to think about is Isaiah chapter 55, verse 9. In that verse, God says, just as the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. And so with these two verses, the whole idea of spending any time or energy thinking about faith is dismissed by these people as irrelevant at best and harmful at worst. Now, if these two verses were all that the Bible had to say about the whole matter, then seeking knowledge to strengthen your faith would actually be a dangerous proposition. But these two verses don't tell the whole story. In Romans chapter 10, the Apostle Paul suggests that it's a lack of knowledge about God and God's ways that's kept the Jewish people from recognizing Jesus as the Messiah and responding to him as they should. He says, my heart's desire and prayer to God for the Israelites is that they may be saved. For I can testify about them that they are zealous for God, but their zeal is not based on knowledge. This is the counterpoint to the claim that knowledge puffs up. It's possible that for some people knowledge will puff up, but that doesn't mean that the pursuit of knowledge for the sake of faith should be abandoned. Zeal for God without proper knowledge of God is just as misguided. So the risk we take when we abandon the pursuit of knowledge is that our faith will be mistaken, misdirected, and misapplied. Dallas Willard was a philosophy professor at the University of Southern California, and he really sought to clarify this connection between knowledge and commitment in the Christian faith. He wrote, knowledge and commitment are not exclusive of one another, rather they are related. If we don't have knowledge of God at the foundation of our commitment, that commitment will simply not hold up. Faith without knowledge is like a house with a weak foundation. It is destined to come crashing down. So when it comes to your faith, your head and your heart aren't at odds. They're not against each other. They're intricately linked together. Now let's think about why you can't just believe. Peter Kreeft and Ronald Ticelli, those are the two philosophers that I mentioned in the last lesson. They also point out another reason why it's important to reflect on the intellectual aspects of faith. They put it very simply, we can't believe what we believe to be untrue. Now, this statement makes perfect sense when we consider an example. If you told me that you would give me $1 million if I believed that elephants could fly, I would try my hardest to believe it. But there would be one big problem. I don't believe it. In reality, I think that it's impossible for an elephant to fly. So you'd be off the hook. You wouldn't need to give me $1 million, much less even $1, because I can't force myself to believe what I believe can't happen. Kenneth Daniels is a former missionary who eventually walked away from his Christian faith, but he understands how belief really works. Why did he leave Christianity behind? He explains, I found I had no choice but to believe what I thought to be true and to disbelieve what I thought to be untrue. Admonitions like you must choose to believe are incomprehensible to me. The fact is, a person can't believe what he or she thinks is ultimately illogical, impossible, or untrue. So Kenneth Daniels speaks for all of us when he says, I believe what I believe because I think it's true. And just in case you're wondering, this is why it doesn't do any good for a pastor to insist that you just believe the stories about Jesus or the teachings of Christianity. You won't just believe because you can't just believe. If you could, maybe you would, but you can't, even if we raise the stakes by saying that heaven and hell hang in the balance. Real belief simply doesn't work like that. It doesn't work for you like that, and it doesn't work for anybody else like that. We require real reasons to support and sustain what we really believe. Now let's do a quick recap of the last two lessons. First, I described our secular age. This is a time where we have a surplus of options and a staggering amount of doubt. Apologetics, or giving reasons for why we believe what we believe, is a helpful way to cut through the confusion. Some people push back against an intellectual approach to faith, and they want to emphasize emotions instead. However, it's important to recognize that you can't have love without knowledge. Our heads are the pathway to our hearts. And ultimately, we believe what we believe because we think it's true. But that last observation, that we believe what we believe because we think it's true, well, that leads to an interesting question that we'll look at in the next lesson. And that question is, how do we know what we know?